can't just take money from me and give me bad services. Yeah. You understand? So, in fact, what is going on in this country is very bad.
It's terrible. The light just goes off.
They can put it off 2 times, 3 times a week without information. So anytime they put it off like that, then our work all stands still.
And the customers complain, they'll be light off, so they will not like to come back anymore, and it all makes their business goes down.
People are angry. Months and months of load shedding have played havoc with people's lives and put businesses, big and small, in jeopardy.
It means that either industries' cost of production will go up if they switch to their own, perhaps private diesel generators, or that they are not able to produce at all. And if they're not able to produce at all, it has a rippling effect throughout the economy.
CEO of Gridco, Charles Darku.
And I think probably the worst people who are going to be affected are the small business people, because they don't tend to have alternatives. They don't tend to have standbys, because in that sector, the small scale sector, where the bulk of our labor is, it means there's a complete dislocation.
Today, I'm happy to switch on the first power of the Bui hydroelectric dam.
There was a sigh of relief when Bui Dam's first power came on stream in early May, adding a crucial 133 megawatts to the national grid. But does this mean that load shedding is over? No, it doesn't, says Kukwawache of VRA. It's little more than a temporary reprieve.
The ideal situation is if we have more capacity than we use. And we have, in the lingo of the industry, the reserve that is required to keep a system stable.
Ghana's current capacity is just under 2,500 megawatts, and we have less than 10% in reserve, a dangerously low margin, and way below the international standard of 25%, meaning that maintenance work, unforeseen breakdowns, or forced outages could once again result in widespread load shedding. Simply put, demand outstrips supply.
And the problem we have right now is just not enough generation, if you like. So let's fix that.
Let's focus on that.
Government's plan is to double our generation capacity to 5,000 megawatts by 2016. But getting there is going to take massive investment.
We have a project that's going on right now. We're going to add 200 megawatts to the system by end of next year sometime. We've already spent over 100 million euro, and we're going to spend another 80, 90 million to complete that project, dollars in this case. We have an expansion of a Takoradi 2 project that has started. That will come on perhaps early 2015. That's $300 million that we're getting from the banks.
A further 3 thermal projects are on the drawing board at a projected cost of $700 million.
So I'm talking $1.5 billion over the next 3 years, and it'll allow me to add, let's say, over 1,000 megawatts.
That leaves a shortfall of 1,500 megawatts to reach the target of 5,000 by 2016. So who fills the gap?
It has to come from independent power producers who are willing to make the investments and take the risk of putting power plants in our economy.
They're fast and efficient typically. They've done it before elsewhere typically. And I see a big role for them in the future of the country's electricity sector.
In anticipation of that role, the system has been deregulated to open up the market to the private sector. But so far, a mere handful have responded. Senate is one of the few. Its CEO, Eunice Bichum.
Independent power producers are business people, and they need the right incentives. And so we're not going to come here and invest to make a loss.
The simple truth is this. The tariff paid to power producers is below production costs, and they are running at a loss. Gone are the days when we could rely on Akosombo Dam to provide the nation with cheap hydropower. Today's thermal plants are run on either gas or crude oil.
Now, obviously, natural gas is the preferred fuel for generation. It's cleaner, it's not as hard on your equipment, it's lower maintenance costs, it's more efficient.
And it's cheaper. Producing 1 kilowatt of electricity from gas costs 12 pesos, while the equivalent from oil costs 36. Ghana receives its gas from Nigeria, but supply is erratic and unreliable. A break in the West Africa gas pipeline last year cut off supply completely, leaving power producers no option but to produce power from oil at huge cost.
That's the part that hurts us all too often in this country is that the tariff has to keep up with the elements of the production costs that are outside the control of the producers.
And it doesn't. There has been no tariff increase in 3 years.
So the last time we changed the tariff, that was December of 2011, the currency has gone down by over 20%. Okay, my fuel bill has tripled. In 2011, I spent $200 million. Last year, I spent $600 million. That is a fact.
Even the cost of producing hydropower has doubled. Generation costs at Akosombo are currently around 6 pesos per kilowatt hour, but don't expect the same of Bui.
Now with Bui coming in many years later, that plant is going to cost more. And I've seen some numbers thrown around at about 10 cents a kilowatt hour.
From Bui?
Yes.
So it's still hydro, but it's twice as expensive as
but it's twice as expensive because it costs a lot more now to build that kind of infrastructure.
Ghana's own gas from the Jubilee oil field will come on stream hopefully by the end of this year. But again, a word of caution from Kukwawoche.
What I understand is that we have discovered about 5 trillion cubic feet of gas, which is probably, we compare it to Nigeria, Nigeria has 180 trillion cubic feet of gas. So Ghana has a fraction of what Nigeria has, but it can be used. And we can use it to run 4 or 5 different power plants.
We already have been told that there is not enough natural gas. I think we know that there isn't enough natural gas for all the plants that need to come online.
For the foreseeable future, power producers will be reliant on oil. It's crippling them, and it's not sustainable.
We can stabilize the current situation. That's clearly a priority months. But long term, we've got to address the tariff issue.
As Charles Darko points out, an inadequate tariff doesn't impact only on production cost.
When we talk about investors, we're not just talking about, private investors. We're also talking about the banks. And so to the extent that the tariff doesn't cover cost, banks are reluctant to invest into utilities. And similarly, equity investors who probably will take more risk than banks, won't do it.
New investment is crucial to all the utilities. When Gridco was launched in 2008 to take over transmission responsibilities from VRA, it inherited an antiquated system desperately in need of upgrading. Over the past few years, millions have been spent on modernizing and expanding the network. The new National Control Center, for example, is state-of-the-art and comparable to the best in the world. But after years of neglect and underinvestment, millions more are needed to bring the system up to scratch.
We're dealing with the problem from a holistic perspective. That's why we launched an investment program over 8 years, $1 billion.
It's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money, but that's the nature of the business.
ECG, the nation's power distributor, is no better off. It too needs millions invested in infrastructure, new transformers, new conductors, new cables, to get the current system optimally operational. Add to that the fact that demand for power is growing at almost 10% per year, and millions more are needed to expand the system. Managing Director William Hutton Mensah.
And it's been established that we need at least $200 million every year to be able to keep up with the demand in electricity.
And finding the money to do that is simply impossible. Because tariffs haven't increased and production costs have gone through the roof, ECG finds itself in the position where it's paying more to power producers than it can sell the power for to consumers. It's running at a massive loss. It's also owed millions in bad debt, with government the biggest defaulter.
We are doing our very best to retrieve these debts. We have teams and personnel on the ground always going out to collect monies.
Are we getting anywhere? Are you getting your debts paid?
Well, we have made some strides, I can say, but at least we can do better. That's a fact. But operating a credit system is not very easy in this environment. Getting people to really pay for services rendered.
I think your problem is because those services are to government, and you are a government institution. You see, that's why people wonder why you have an ECG. If a private guy will go for his money, but you are the same government, so how do you go for your money?
No, we are still working hard at that. I can show you. We get institutions and individuals as customers disconnected when they owe us for some period.
So why do you disconnect government office as well? Or you are disconnecting individuals and so on?
No, we haven't got to that.
Let Ministry of Finance show up on Monday morning and let the lights be on. Why should it be any different?
Generators have a right to a bit of cynicism. Not only does ECG lack the money for new investment, it also doesn't have the money to settle its own debt to VRA, Gridco, and the independent power producers.
Because if we're selling to ECG, just to use an example, at 10 Ghana cedis, a kilowatt hour, and then they turn around and can only collect 6 Ghana cedis a kilowatt hour, you cannot sustain that in the long term. And when you compound that over time, very soon there's disincentives to the power generators who want to come in and invest in generation, because when they can't collect for the power that they're generating, very soon they're going to go out of pay. And you have the cycle where we keep going around, one person blaming the other, and we're not getting the solution.
For the utilities, sustainable tariffs are the only way forward.
Give us levels of tariff that will enable us operate as a business entity should do.
Meaning to cover your costs?
Yes, to cover our costs.
But after months of ruinous rolling blackouts, the public is unsympathetic to calls for a higher tariff.
I don't buy that idea at all, because if you don't supply us, how do we expect us to pay more?
If they are saying that the tariffs are low and because of that we have this problem, then somewhere along the line, maybe the tariffs have to go up.
Oh, well, but the leaders must do something first before we can pay more. Because if I don't have electricity to work, where am I going to get the money? Without electricity, I can't work. So that means I don't have money to pay more.
Ghanaians, we want the better things. No matter what it is.
And then pay for it.
And we are paying, but we are not getting it.
But they are saying what you are paying is not enough to get it.
So what do they want us to pay again? Because we came that we should give you more and you give us better services. We give you.
So since you give more, it has not improved at all.
That's why it's worse. I'm telling you.
Leadership does not care. If leadership cares, leadership should have known that we are growing.
Kofi Kapito of the Consumer Protection Agency is vehemently opposed to a tariff increase.
For crying out loud, we are what? A third world country. Our economy is not strong. Our purchasing power is very, very low. We need to consider all that. The fact that somebody wants to drive a Rolls Royce or a Bentley does not mean every Ghanaian should pay for his fuel.
So what do you want the utilities to do? They are saying they need adjustment in tariffs to be viable entities.
One, at this point, as we are in Ghana, is for them to supply uninterrupted and adequate electricity 24/7, 365 days a year.
What is two?
To get rid of all the waste, government policies, as you're talking about, maybe even allowing private people to enter. I don't know. I'm not a policy maker.
What number is increased tariffs?
Increase is maybe number 10.
Increase is number 10.
Yes.
The money must come at the end. You can do everything without the money and bring the money at the end.
But the question is it is retail, This is not, you are selling something to me, and I'm giving you my money. And I'm telling you that, yes, I want you to give me a good service, and I'll pay for it. What is wrong in the consumer in Ghana asking for good services?
People really need to understand what power costs. And I think we're experiencing a bit of that right now. If you have a generator in your home, if you're fortunate enough to have a generator in your home, when the lights go off, you know how much you're spending on fuel, on diesel fuel, to keep the lights on when the mains power goes off. And I can't even touch on the cost of no power at all, because that really is an issue.
Nana Osei Bonsu of the Private Enterprise Federation.
Recovery, of course, we agree with it, because we don't want to depend on, kind of a situation where cost is not recovered, so it leads to the power generators or the power producers not being able to produce for us.
So what you are saying is that the utilities must recover their costs?
Of course. They're not in a benevolent business. They're in a business to make money. They're in a business to distribute something, and there's a cost to that fact. But there must be efficiency in production, and that is where the ball of wax is. If we are inefficient and passing on the additional costs in tariff to the private sector, it's going to be injurious to us.
If we're talking inefficiency, historically, this truly is where the buck stops. ECG. Bad debt, outdated infrastructure, and illegal connections aside, For years, it has been plagued by losses it can't account for. But let's give credit where credit is due. At the end of 2010, losses stood at 27%. At the end of 2012, it was down to 23%. And they hope to reach 20% by the end of this year. Special courts have been put in place to deal with illegal connections. Defaulters are being disconnected, staff are going through retraining programs, and a performance management system is soon to begin. There's also an aggressive campaign to put urban areas onto prepaid meters.
What percentage would you be aiming for?
We would definitely aim to get at least about 60% of our customers on prepayment.
The prepaid system will go a long way to curbing debt, ECG's biggest stumbling block. As of the end of last year, government owes the company 540 million Ghana cedis in unpaid bills. ECG in turn owes VRA, Gridco, and the other independent producers 600 million Ghana cedis. Many argue that if all the debts were settled, a tariff increase wouldn't be necessary. Gridco's Charles Darko says no.
Even if all that money were to be collected, it's still not enough to cover the cost.
Really?
So yes, the money must be collected, and there should be no excuses for that.
Government should pay its bills.
Everyone should pay their bills, including the government. And the good news is that the government has issued a directive that all government bills should be put on the prepayment technology, which will help the business.
But what I would say to that is that it's part of the short-term solution. When we want, or if we want power 2 years, 3 years, 4 years from now, paying bills is not enough.
The utilities argue that if we are to stand any hope of meeting the 5,000 megawatts target by 2016, an increased tariff is unavoidable. A word of caution from Nana Osei-Bonsu.
We got to be careful. Is it affordable? Can we afford to pay? If we cannot afford, charge all you want, increase all you want. People are not going to be able to take it.
Expensive power is certainly better than no power at all.
If expensive and I cannot afford it, it's no power to me.
Yeah, but some can, you can't. That's the point, but you can't.
That means there's some that can use it. There's some. Is that what we're looking for?
If you want electricity, you buy what you can use, period. Like I use the telephone, I buy 100 CDs, I stop.
Okay, charge anything you want, and if only about 2% can afford it, that is fine, because somebody is getting something. That's not the essence of it. You're looking to provide electricity or power to feed your industrialization. You're looking for businesses to develop to a point where they can create jobs. So you're looking from the policy perspective, how does that impact on the majority, not a few?
An encounter with the owner of an internet cafe gave us another perspective.
Comparably, our neighboring countries are paying more for electricity. Because I was in Togo, and the amount of money I had to pay for a hotel was due to the fact that I was going to use air conditioning, and it was quite high.
I see. So they charge on that basis?
Yes, indeed. It was a personal experience, and I was really surprised.
Yeah.
I tell you, in England, you pay for it, and you enjoy it.
That's it. That's very interesting.
Yes.
So really, you're not opposed to increase in tariffs. What you're saying is that you are willing to do that, but you must get what you're paying for. Is that what you're saying?
Value for money.
Value for money.
Yes.
Meaning
that I pay you and you give me the quality of service I deserve.
But Kokwa Wotre cautions against unrealistic expectations.
The difficulty and the challenge is that just because you got a tariff today doesn't mean you provide better service tomorrow. There's a lead time to that. The lead time means you've used that money to secure new investments that take 3 or 4 years to actually put in place. So really the perspective has to be, getting a tariff today will not solve today's problem. But what it should do is provide a foundation for tomorrow's solution.
Granting of a new tariff now rests with the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission, PURC, who, according to Nana Osei-Bonsu, itself has a lot to answer for.
There's a cost to everything that we do, especially when we are in the private sector. We know that people have to pay for the products that we produce. So there's no problem with that. But when you hold the increases and hit us one time, after 3 years, you say 2010, and then come 2013, that is inefficient by itself. Because I did not accumulate, I didn't think there was, when you did not increase it, I thought that was fair. That was the price prevailing because you have cost recovery mechanism. So that is it. I did not put aside money for 2013 to be hit one time to pay for those things.
That's the politics. That's the politics. I'm telling you, that's what it is. When they should do it at the right time, I think it's more of the business of politics.
Maybe it's the business of politics, but it's not the politics of business because we don't do that kind of politics. We do politics of business, and that is that efficiency for price recovery, efficiency for distribution, efficiency in sustainable supply.
In the opinion of Nana Osei Bonsu, sound judgment has been sacrificed on the altar of political expediency. Kwekwa Awotwe puts a new spin on it.
But you're asking for tariff increases and the kind of things that have political ramifications.
They do.
Aren't you worried about that? What are the political ramifications for government of you asking for a higher tariff?
Here's what I would say to that. The political ramifications of a good tariff are a secure energy source for the long term. That's the political ramification. So if you're the leader and you can provide that to your people, that's a positive.